Actually, we're gonna do a Menti first, I think. Oh, yeah, there you go. There it is. So, do you guys know Menti? You go to menti.com, and I just wanted to get a feel for the audience here so I know who I'm talking to. It was really cool to see that a lot of you guys are in-house, because my experience is exclusively in-house. I have kind of a very lopsided experience as an SEOer. I don't think that I've ever requested a link, because Aftonbladet has like 130 million or something. So, but I have some other very specific experiences. So I just wanted to see who I'm talking to. Digital marketing, great. SEO, thank you. That's very helpful. Cool. Okay, I think we're getting it. So there's a lot of specialists specifically in digital marketing. Um, okay, great. All right. Um, gaming, consultant, cool. Loans, software development. Cool. So we have a nice little mix of people here. And okay, I'm gonna move on. What is your job? So if you're a developer, if you're a marketer, if you're a specialist, or if you're just kind of want to get a feel for you guys. All right. Looks like a nice spread here. Lots of developers. Cool. Managers. All right. Specialist. Cool. I'm gonna move along. This was more just for my benefit to see who I'm talking to. So basically, my topic today is about how to get people to care. There you go. Is about how to get people to actually care about SEO. That's different from getting people to do SEO. There are many ways to get people to obey you, and most of them are unpleasant. But but the special thing here is a kind of cultural change. That's kind of what I'm specialized in. So can we just get a show of hands? Have you ever had a problem where you make this beautiful SEO plan or analysis or a suggestion, and you have trouble getting people to understand its importance or do the thing? Have you ever had that happen ever in your life? Okay, so that's what the talk is about, if that was unclear. So, I think of the difference between writing an SEO plan is a little bit like drawing a robot, right? The difference between writing an SEO plan and getting people to do it is like the difference between drawing a robot and building a robot. Very, very different things. You could draw the nicest robot in the world, but if you can't build it, then you don't have any robot, right? But the difference between getting somebody to build your robot, the difference between getting somebody to actually do your SEO plan and care about SEO is like the difference between building a robot and having a child. Okay? So there's a lot of analogies there. Hopefully you teach both your robot and your child something, and hopefully they do things, right? But the difference between getting somebody to do your SEO and getting people to care about SEO is like the difference between programming a robot or raising a child. Are you with me there? Is this too advanced? So this is me. I'm called Reggie. My name is Reggie Gudmundsson. That's because I'm Icelandic. But everybody calls me Reggie. I'm the SEO manager of Aftonbladet. And the emphasis is actually on manager. There's actually probably lots of people in here that can tell me more about SEO than I can tell them. But I'm educated in management and leadership, and my thing is organizational change. I'm currently on parental leave, actually, as of last October. There's a little Valkyria, so I'm not working right now. Sorry? So I thought I would just tell you a little bit about Aftonbladet as a background to my story, and then we'll get into the meat and the takeaways. Oh. I'm just glad it wasn't my fault.
Yeah, it's mine.
It's okay. Appreciate everything you're doing. So, this is Aftonbladet. Aftonbladet was founded in 1830. It is a newspaper, and it's actually a tabloid. Which, if you're from England or America, you'll probably get a little bit of a reaction when I say tabloid, but it's not like a tabloid in that way. It has a tabloid format, but we actually have a very high standard of journalism. We do a lot of investigative journalism, and then we just write about it in a slightly cheeky way, so just to be clear. And we actually started our website. Well, I wasn't there. I was 8. But in 94. So we were early adapters of the web. And there's actually a lot of cultural baggage that you can glean from this, right? So, for instance, we have an entrenched culture. It's a journalistic culture. You have people who've been working there their entire working lives. So you have people that when you come to them and you start talking about SEO, they think in their heart of hearts, this isn't journalism. Journalism is writing an article, then you give it to the editor puts it into print, and the typesetter puts together the letters, but it's also, there's a beautiful culture of entrepreneurship and innovation there, and actually a lot of the time it's too much. Like sometimes they'll come 2 days before they launch an entire section and be like, by the way, we have esports now. And I'm like, thank you. So there's a kind of a push and pull there. We are, as Maria said, the biggest domestic website in Sweden. All of the other ones above us there are foreign, and the next one below us is actually our greatest competitor, Expressen. There's a decades-long, lifelong rivalry and hatred between the two websites, so this will be relevant in a minute. But there we are, news in Malmö. So. The feud continues now on Google. But I thought I'd talk a little bit about the journey and when I came in, and then I'll explain a little bit about what we did. So this is from SEMrush. It's a graph showing relative positions with a number of keywords here. This is an estimate. We have way more keywords than this. And the scale of traffic is logarithmic. So it's just like the trend is important, but the numbers aren't. But this is in 2013. We were doing great. And then in 2014, Expressen started doing stuff, right? Our lifelong enemy Expressen started optimizing their content, and they got really, really good at SEO, like really good. So obviously something had to be done. So here in between, I'm going back now, June 2016 to December 2016, that's when we started working on SEO. They hired my previous manager, Daniel Britz, and they did a number of technical, structural changes, and they went from 14,000 subsections to like 12, and went over to a tag system, and they did a number of interesting things. And this is where I come into the picture. I was hired in January 2017, and then this is what has happened since then. We didn't just shrink. What happened was both us and Expressen grow here. So now we're in the neighborhood of Wikipedia, which was pretty fun. And then this is September 2019. So we're getting there. We're catching up. We've been keeping up, and now we're catching up. So that's what we've been doing. This is SEO traffic as a proportion of total traffic. So I kind of want to show you here. So that is where I'm hired, 2017. You're welcome. I'm just kidding. No. Many people did many things. But my point here is that in 2017, we were in the middle of a messy migration. So we didn't do a lot of technical stuff. This is mostly just teaching an enormous number of people to do very basic SEO. That's kind of what we're talking about. And then in the following year, we had a combination of more advanced SEO and then some more technical stuff. And this is the revolutionary technology of a sitemap. We broke it in the migration, and then get your sitemaps in order, guys. So today I was going to talk about a little bit of management theory, which it didn't seem like there was a lot of managers in the room, which is good for me because this this kind of hinges on you not knowing much about management theory. And then we're going to connect that to sort of the educational and the managerial processes that we did to get people to change their behavior. And from there, we're going to move on to cultural processes, because it's very, very hard to build a culture if nobody knows what SEO is, right? It's very, very hard to build an SEO culture if people aren't doing even the basic SEO. So there you go. Without further ado, we're going to get into the meat of it. So this is the 4 frames model by Bowman and Beal. And it basically defines different types of leadership. So strategic leadership is all about the frameworks around the work being done, right? So if you can get a machine to do the job, that's great. That's great management. Political leadership, that can be informal. So it's, I have a really bad temper and I'll yell at you if you don't do what I say. That's informal. It's terrible management, but that's one way to get things done. Human resource leadership, that's all about developing people. And so, for instance, like teaching people about SEO, that would be a human resource approach to management. And then symbolic leadership, that's where you get to the cultural change. That's really the meat that we want to get into. So that's all about culture, meaning, ritual, stories, heroes. That's the fun stuff, right? But you can also see, if we're sticking with our robot child metaphor, on the left we have robotic, on the right we have family, right? So the one on the left is all about getting people to do what you want, and the other one is about developing people to be able to and to care about what you want. So, what tools do we have to affect this change? There's many different lists, but this is a very typical one about what kinds of authority you can wield as a manager, right? So there's formal authority, which is I'm your boss, I get to tell you what to do. There's informal authority, which is basically I'm charismatic, or you like me, or you owe me a favor, or whatever it is, and therefore you do what I say, right? Now, right off the bat, we're going to cross out that one, because as an SEO manager, I don't have any formal authority over anyone. I work with the people who have formal authority, and they tell people to do SEO, but they tell people to do all sorts of things. So the managerial challenge is to get people to do what I want without having any authority to tell them to do what I want, right? Then there's traditional authority, which is basically if you're religious or if you respect the king, that's traditional authority. That's actually part of the reason why I started wearing a tie. Funnily enough, not only in this room, but also at Aftonbladet. I think to this day I'm the only person who wears a tie every day to work. And that's because I'm a foreigner, I'm an outsider, I'm not a journalist. I don't have any authority. I need something. I gotta have something to show that I'm for real. If I come in like torn jeans, like, who is this punk kid, right? And then obviously expert authority. I'm, pretty much or at least in the beginning, I was the undisputed SEO authority within Aftonbladet. The problem was just that nobody knew what SEO was, nor why it was important. So we kind of had to build the respect for that authority, even though I indisputably had it. And then you have reward and coercive authority. That's basically the ability to hand out rewards and punishments. It's you can connect that to goal management. Consequence management, which is, if you do this, then you will get this, or otherwise you will get this. So I'm not going to connect each of these things to everything that I'm going to say. I'm going to give you examples, and we don't have time to do X and Y every single time. You can just keep these models in mind, and then if you watch the recording of this video, then you might want to do a little diagram. So basically, we started with teaching initiatives, right? That's everybody at Aftonbladet. When I started, almost nobody knew what SEO even was, right? So we had a number of educations with basically everybody in the company, telling them, this is what SEO is and why you should do it. Now we have more structured, because we have beginners and then we have more advanced people and stuff like that. But in the beginning, it was basically just everybody was at level 0. Now, there's not really any way to explain my philosophy to teaching without mentioning this. So I'm actually trained to preach. I'm involved in a small church community, and I preach there occasionally. And basically... Sorry, I need to look at my notes here. So basically, preaching, in my opinion, is meeting the whole person where they're at and taking them where you want them to be. You need to meet the person where they're at. You need to see where they are. You need to hold their hand and walk them over to where they need to be, right? And the difference between teaching and preaching is transferring information. Preaching is altering action. It's getting people to change how they behave. You always want to have an action in mind when you're teaching in this case, in an organization, you're not really preaching. But you should always be thinking when they leave this room, they will do X, right? So we're going to stick with this analogy about preaching for a little bit. I hope you bear with me. So I'm a big believer in the 1-point sermon. Basically, people will only remember one thing. If you're good, they'll remember one thing that you tell them if you stand up like this for half an hour, right? So you better pick that very, very carefully, right? You can say that. If you're going to take away with you one thing today, take this away with you, right? And basically, it's a waste of time to have more than 1 point in your education. So what you do is you have 1 point, and then you hit that from all different angles. This is do this. This is why you do it. This is how you do it. This is what you'll get if you do it, right? So how this ties into our experience is, for instance, at Aftonbladet, in the beginning, we literally said, okay, we're going to pick one thing. Write descriptive page titles, please. And we spent, like, literally, we're talking about 100 people. So it took maybe a couple of months before people were consistently doing it. And I'm gonna tell you a little bit more in a second about how you get people to do it consistently. But basically, we were like, write descriptive page titles. And then in a couple of months, you go, maybe your descriptive page titles don't need to be 150 characters long. Maybe try to keep them to about 55. Is it 50 now, by the way? Is it 50? Has it reduced? He's not listening. It's okay.
Sorry, I was distracted.
Don't worry about it. So yeah, keep them to about 55. Then, when everybody's doing that, more or less, maybe your 55 character descriptive page title should contain some keywords. And then after that, you go, maybe you should try to put the keywords at the front. This is literally months and months of work, but it's hundreds of people. So, you got to wait for everybody to get on the bandwagon before you move on to the next thing. Yeah, exactly. And then now we have it in different levels. So you have beginners and then you have advanced, but it's still always just one thing at each level that you're kind of preaching to people. And another good thing about starting with 1 point, with one thing, is that it can give you results. So in this case, you write the descriptive titles, you get an uptick in traffic, then you can go back and say, hey, look what effect this had. You build credibility. So the 1 point sermon, do one thing at a time, the end. That's it. This might be a little bit controversial. I'm going to quote the Bible. But this is really, this is something that I believe in. I've literally done this in my trainings with my team, as Johan Kimrin will attest to. So basically, I'm taking this a little bit out of context, but teaching is just the first step. You got to teach, and then you got to correct, and then you got to rebuke if you have to, and then you got to train. Those are different things, and you want the uniformity of purpose to be a through line in all of them, right? So if I call a new journalist into a meeting and I just tell them about writing descriptive page titles, what are the odds they're going to actually do it? I don't, as I say, I'm not their boss. I don't really have any venue for punishing them for disobedience. Maybe 30% that they're going to do that. But then I look him up in the system a day later and I see if he's been doing what he or she has been doing what I said. And then I correct whatever they did wrong, and I email them, and I say, hey, I noticed you hadn't written, good titles. I hope you don't mind that I wrote new ones. Please try to remember in the future. I'm very sweet about it, but you got to correct. Oh, right. Oh, yeah, and that does a couple of things. One of the things is just you remind them, oh, yeah, right, I'm supposed to think about this, because, they have a lot to think about. But the other thing is, and we're going to get into this in a second about feelings, you feel a little bit ashamed, don't you? Or at least a little bit embarrassed. And embarrassment is actually a really, really strong feeling. I've done a few things that I remember feeling very embarrassed about in my life, and I've never done those things again, and I never will. Yeah. I won't mention any examples unless you ask me later. So what's the difference between teaching, correcting, rebuking, and training? Teaching and correcting, you correct someone when they do something wrong. Rebuking is you know that they know, right? And they're just being lazy. That's completely different from correcting. That's like, what are you doing? Like, shape up. Skärp dig, one of my favorite phrases in Swedish. And then training, you help them to do it again and again and again and again until they can't not do it. It's in their DNA, right? That's really where you want to get with this. And then you can move on to the next thing. So I love this quote. What is it? Amateurs train until they get something right. Professionals train until they can't get it wrong. So I really, really like that phrase. So I had another quote that I wanted to put up here. If you thought it was controversial that I was quoting the Bible, that one was by Hitler. So I took that one out. I thought it was a little too, I didn't know what the crowd was. But basically, that's the earliest reference that I can find to this idea of the lowest common denominators from Mein Kampf. It talks about how when you're doing propaganda, you always got to appeal to the least intelligent person in the room. And granted, none of the people I work with are unintelligent, but some of them might not be tech savvy. You see what I mean? So you always got to target your message to the lowest common denominator, and then you can read the room. As Johan, this is a terrible translation, as Kim Brin keeps talking about, he keeps hammering me about, you got to talk to the bönder på bondska. You got to talk to the farmers in farmerish, and the learned in Latin. It's very hard to translate to English. You got to speak the language of the people that you're talking to, basically. So different people have different learning styles, and this is just the thing that I wanted to touch on. So, for instance, I always try to get people to do something when I'm educating. So the mentee thing in the beginning, it might not have worked, we'll see, but it engages you when you do something. So I always start by asking a question, or having a Kahoot, or having some action that you have to do. Because a lot of people, we tend to forget that. We're a very schooled population. So we're used to reading and writing, and we're used to hearing and listening. And we do some visual illustrations, which is good, but I think the action one is one that we tend to miss. And then finally, repetition is the mother of learning. 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 Basically, we started coming up with all of these different ways that we could just get people to repeat what we had already taught them. So, for instance, you do the basic level education, and at the beginning of the second level education, you have a little Kahoot where you refresh the major takeaways from the first education, which, as you know now, is write a darn title, page title. And then we actually came up with a fourth step after the basic, medium, and advanced. We have a test. And the test is, it's just see whether people have learned, and it's completely voluntary, but it's also it's an open book exam. It just makes you read the whole thing again. So you repeat it. Once you repeated something 4 times, you should remember it more or less. So those are my tips about education, about getting people to do what you want. The next step is cultural processes. So that's the difference between a robot and a child, right? You want to get them to care about what you care about. So it's going to sound very, very mushy, but you can't neglect the fact that caring, if you're going to get people to care about SEO, caring is a feeling. It's an emotional thing. And people are emotional beings. And we're all very, very logical people here in Sweden. And we all go to school for a very long time. But you got to take into consideration that people are emotional beings, right? So what am I talking about? How can you elicit feelings about SEO? Results elicit feelings, right? So actually, before I arrived at Aftonbladet Nyhetsbladet, the entertainment section was already ahead of everybody else on SEO. There's somebody else who was there before me who did a very good job. So you can lift them up in front of everybody and be like, look, they grew their traffic by 30% in a few months. Don't you want to be like them? That encourages a feeling, right? And the entertainment section feels very good about that, obviously. But also feedback, So whether or not, if you ask for something and from the silo of the developers, I'm being a little bit facetious, but very few people actually think about going back and telling them how it went, whether it was good or bad. And just doing that is like a hugely appreciated thing, right? Envy is a feeling. So competitiveness with expression is a very, very powerful motivator for Aftonbladet. So that's actually another Kimrin golden moment. Kimrin is he was until recently was my colleague and right-hand man at Aftonbladet. Now he moved to Malmö. So, but I had all of this logical stuff. Oh, this is SEO, and this is what you'll get, and this is the effect, and da-da-da, and that's why it's good. And he was like, why do you have all that crap there? Just put a picture of Expression dominating us in the search results. Just delete all that and just put a picture of Expression dominating us, because it's a gut reaction. That's not right. That's not right, you know? And then you're engaged. Then you're with me. Gratitude and appreciation elicit feelings. They're feelings of camaraderie. So I remember, this is a silly thing. Well, maybe not so silly, but after the sitemaps thing that boosted our traffic so much, we were very happy in the SEO team. So we all went and bought tiny little muffins and went up to the developers and gave them the muffins and thanked them for doing that, you know? And apparently that was very appreciated by the developers, you know, because appreciation is a feelings thing. Rewards, even non-monetary rewards. So we crowned the SEO King of the Year in 2018 in front of the whole company. Everybody applauds them. It's a silly thing, but it helps people to have a feeling about, oh, I could do that, you know, or that person at least feels good about it. Correction and rebukes elicit feelings, but you have to be kind of careful about them, because the feeling might be that they hate you now. So use that sparingly. But there's a place for it, and I think especially if it comes from a place of compassion, like you want the person to succeed, and then you're like, come on, you're better than this, you know, do better. Then it can be a really, really strong motivator. But a word of warning is that I don't think that you can be playing on people's emotions if you're not an empathetic person. Because then you're just manipulating people, then you're a psychopath. So it has to come from a point of empathy and caring. I, for instance, care very much about the mission of Aftonbladet. I think we're an important force in society. You might not agree with me, but that's what I think. And I care about the welfare of the employees. I want them to do well on search so we get more money so that everybody is rich and happy. So that's why I care about us winning at SEO, and that's why I feel like I can talk to people's feelings. But people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Caring about SEO, caring about people. Yeah, I think you get it. All right. So socialization is actually a term from sociology. It is the method by which you learn a culture. So for instance, whether it's your parents saying, boys don't do that, boys don't cry, or, you know, girls gotta wear dresses, or, you know, it's a lame example. Or if it's something that's tacit, we go to mosque on Fridays or church on Sundays, you know, we eat lamb on Sundays. It's a big thing in Iceland. So you know that you learn either implicitly or explicitly what the culture that you're expected to conform to is. But for us, it was partly very, very explicit when we wanted to start an SEO culture in Aftonbladet. These educations and these kind of corrections, they were very explicit. This is what we do now. But it's also, you can't do socialization without socializing. So the thing that we did, what I'm trying to get around to, is we would sit one day at each of the different sections of the paper. So sports section one day, entertainment section one day, news section one day, and just get to know everybody. Because it's very, very easy. You can't manage by email, basically. If I email you and I tell you, oh, you did wrong. Oh, sucks. I'll get another email like that in a week where you yell at me for doing it wrong. But if you have a face that it's like, oh, this is the thing that Reggie cares about. This is the thing that Johan cares about. It's a lot harder to dismiss. You see what I mean? That's how you build a culture. I'm a big believer in what I call the scarecrow effect, which is basically that when they see me, they optimize, because I'm like a scarecrow. So I would literally, Aftonbladet is this really long building, probably like a half a kilometer or something, and they have like different halls, and I would literally, whenever I had business walking up or down, I would always take a different route, just so that everybody in the company would see me. I've literally had people say to me, Reggie, every time I see you, I think about SEO. I'm like, there you go, hard to miss. And literally, I don't know what to call this effect. I used to think this was the dog in the nighttime effect, but I recently found out that that's the exact opposite. So I'm inclined to call it the Karamazov effect, which is, it's a long story. There's a book by Dostoevsky called The Brothers Karamazov. There's somebody who gives the impression that they were up all night because a dog barked like 3 times during the night. And somebody goes, I was up all night. When in fact, they only woke up 3 times. So somebody said to me once at Aftonbladet, man, it's great to have somebody who's just like always keeping watch. And I was like, I have talked to you twice in the last month. But because you make those kind of vivid appearances, and because you're always visible, it feels like you're always there. You know, so that's I'm dubbing it the Karamazov effect. I'm pretty sure that was from that book. So I'm almost done. I'm also almost done with my time. Identity is the story that you tell yourself about yourself, right? There's such a thing as narrative identity, which is being researched a lot. And it's basically, if I tell myself I'm a superhero, then I walk around like I'm a superhero. It's an identity thing. And I believe that is much more powerful than any incentive you can give. Oh, if we increase the SEO traffic, you'll get money, or any information. Oh, we need SEO because of this and this and this. It's much more powerful to say, you work at Aftonbladet. We are the biggest website in Sweden, and it is beneath us for Expressen to be above us in the search results. That is a much, much more powerful message, right? And it's actually, there's some science to back me up. So in 2006, they took kids from an underprivileged background and basically started pulling them into a room once a week and just talking to them about who they are and who they could be, and kind of trying to change their vision of themselves to where they could see themselves being like high-performing students. And just by doing this, the kids studied harder, had better attendance and better grades, you know, just by changing their view of who they themselves are. So one of the things that we did was I would just sit and optimize everything. I would literally just look at we publish like hundreds of articles a day, and like all of the big ones, I would just sit and just look and correct them. This is in the very beginning when nobody knew what we were doing. So I would just sit at the Sport and just optimize all of their articles for a few days, and then our traffic would go up. I don't know whether you guys, I don't know whether you're from, I don't know if other people can do this. We're such a big domain, I can sit down and like place like 10, 20 internal links and tweak some headlines, and I see us go up in like 10, 15 minutes. I don't know if anybody else has ever experienced that. So it's a huge privilege. I know that's not thanks to me, but it is very fun. So I would do that for a few days, and then I would stand up and I would go, great job, guys. You are doing so well with the SEO. But they weren't, see, it was me who did it. But what that does is, praise is addictive. And you feel good, and you're like, oh, wow, I'm doing really well. And you want to keep getting that praise and keep getting that good feeling. And then the other thing that happens is if you weren't actually optimizing, you think that everybody else was optimizing and you weren't. And that, again, you feel ashamed. And then you hopefully change your behavior. So I call that kind of benign emotional manipulation. I hope I don't sound like a psychopath right now. So takeaways. I'm almost out of time. So whether you're in-house or if you're a consultant, maybe you want to start putting in a plan for how you will get your plan into action when you make an audit or when you make an SEO analysis, right? How will you make people do it, and how will you make people care about it? Maybe you want to do a little bit of organizational or cultural analysis. What kind of company is this? Do they have an entrenched culture, or do they have a new and flexible culture? What kind of assets and liabilities do they have? What type of leadership am I going to utilize? Strategic, political, HR, or symbolic? What type of authority do I have? Do I have formal authority, informal authority? Do I have expert authority, traditional authority, coercive authority, or reward authority? Can I hand out punishments and rewards? And then maybe think about these steps, right? Think about the 1-point sermon: teach, correct, rebuke, and train. Find the lowest common denominator, and engage people with different learning styles. And then if you're trying to build a culture, engage feelings, socialize, and build identity. I see some people taking photos, so I'm waiting. Sorry, I know I'm going over my time. Thank you very much. There's my LinkedIn.